Hello, everyone, and welcome to Kilowatt, a podcast about electric vehicles, renewable energy, autonomous driving, and much, much more. My name is Bodie, and my voice is going out. The hazards of being a podcaster and talking on mic multiple times a week. Your voice goes out often. So let's see if we can get through this show with the voice intact. Starting off, we know that EVs over the lifetime of the vehicle are cleaner options than ICE cars or internal combustion engine vehicles. EVs they're just more efficient than their ICE counterparts. However, we should acknowledge that gasoline is actually very energy dense. Unfortunately, 20% of the energy that comes from gasoline, or 20% of the potential energy, is used to power the vehicle, and the other 80% is just wasted in the form of heat. So the gasoline itself is very energy dense. However, the vehicles are not very good at taking advantage of that energy density. So that leads us to electric vehicles, right? We're storing electricity versus temporarily storing liquefied dead dinosaurs and then putting more liquefied dead dinosaurs in our vehicle. So as a rule, like if you have an EV for any length of time or an EV's on the road for any length of time, there's going to be a time when it is much more it's much better for the environment than an internal combustion engine. We know this, right? Well, there's another way that EVs are helping make our air cleaner. A new study shows that EVs reduce brake dust by 83% because, of course, regenerative braking, right? The study was looked at primarily London, Milan, and Barcelona, and they just kind of looked at the pollution that was taking place in those cities. And the study not only looked at the brake dust pollution, but also tire and road wear. So battery electric vehicles weigh more, so it would stand to reason when it comes to tire wear and possibly road wear, they would pollute more when it comes to this, right? So when measuring tire wear pollution or road wear pollution, the study compared a Model 3 with a BMW 3 Series. The Model 3 is about 200 pounds more or heavier than the BMW 3 Series. The researchers saw a difference of about 5% in the road tire pollution. So the Model 3 gave off about 5% more pollution than the BMW 3 Series did. But when it comes to air particles, brake dust is more likely to become airborne than the pollution from tire or road wear. So brake dust is about 40% more likely, or 40% likely, I guess. 40% of the brake dust becomes airborne, whereas for tire wear and road wear, only 1 to 5% of that becomes airborne or gets into the air. So once it's in the air, obviously it has the potential of getting into us and to our lungs. So yeah, I thought this was a really interesting story. They have a very nice interactive website that I'll put a link to in the show notes. And I didn't write down the group that did this study, but it was out of Europe. I'll put that in the show notes if you want to look at it. It's a really cool interactive website, so you can kind of see more data. But I thought that was interesting. Moving on. So we're going to start off. We're going to talk about Android Auto, but we're going to start off by kind of differentiating between Android Auto and Android Automotive, which is Android Automotive is actually marketed now as cars with Google built in, right? Which is not a great name. It's better than Android Automotive because Android Auto and Android Automotive are so close. But cars with Google built in is also based on Android. So there seems to be some confusion out there when it comes to this. Android Automotive, or cars with Google built in, again, terrible name. That is the full operating system running on the vehicle, right? Whereas Android Auto projects or mirrors your device, your Android device, onto the infotainment screen. And Android Auto can be used with any compatible vehicle, any vehicle that's compatible with Android Auto, whereas Android Automotive or Google cars with Google built in can only be used with the car that it's actually built into because it's part of the car's operating system, right? All right. So now that we've got that hopefully cleared up, this story's about Android Auto. Android Auto is adding some fun new features later this year. They're adding support for video apps, web browsers, and a better in car experience for Spotify. So if you're an Android Auto user, you can now watch YouTube or Netflix while you're charging your vehicle, mirroring through the Android Auto on your Android device. The better listening experience that they talked about is as a feature called Jam. So when you're in the vehicle, you tap on Jam, which is on the infotainment screen, and then people in the car can scan the QR code, and you can create a group playlist for your road trip, which I think is neat. When my oldest was doing sports way back in the day, we would create a playlist. I would put one song in, she'd put a song in, and we just kind of moved back and forth so we could expose each other to the other one's music, right? I honestly love doing this because one, it exposed me to different music. Like my oldest is how I found out about Adele and Lady Gaga. I didn't know who they were before we started doing this. And honestly, Sierra, who's my oldest, she was very early on with the Adele. And then, I got to expose her to weird, kooky music like the Violent Femmes and Nancy and Beth, which honestly, Nancy and Beth have some songs that children should not be listening to, but some of their songs are friendly. Let's say friendly. But it's a fond memory, is what I'm trying to say here. We got to share our different likes with one another while we were stuck in the car, which led to conversations, and that's always fun. And I only let her listen to the Nancy and Beth songs that were appropriate, because there are some that are very inappropriate, and I know some of you are going to look it up and you're going to judge me as a father. Mint Julep, Mr. Jailer, those kind of songs. We're not talking about the 50 Cent songs or any of the other stuff that they do. So before you email me and tell me I'm a horrible dad, just letting you know. She might have found that other music on her own. We also listen to a lot of Tony Bennett. Anyway, moving on. That is it for our EV news. There wasn't a lot of news this week, and it might be because there was a holiday in the U.S., but not a lot of compelling news. So let's just move on to our how to support the show plug. And it's very simple how to support the show. You can now go to supportkilowatt.com, which you could before, but that just took you to Patreon. But if you go to supportkilowatt.com now, that'll take you to the 918 Digital website, and it will show you how to support Kilowatt on Patreon or Supercast. And we might put some other things up there in the future, but it's nice. It's easy. For some reason, the support Kilowatt page isn't being shown on the regular website. It's just some hidden page. I got to figure out what's going on with the pod page. But yeah, supportkilowatt.com, and that'll get you where you need to be if you want to support the show. All righty, let's move on to our Tesla news. Tesla owners who have newer iPhones they're getting a cool update. So you know how Tesla has the live activities. So if you scroll down on the lock screen, you can kind of see what's going on. Like if I'm going to scroll down on the lock screen on mine phone right now, and I could see that my lights are on in the living room, my lights are on outside, that kind of thing, right? It just gives you what's going on at a glance, right? Well, the Tesla iOS app now supports those Apple Live activities. So if you use the drop-down screen and you're supercharging, it'll give you some information on your charge. The dynamic island, which is up at the top on the newer iPhones, will also show you some information as far as, the charge level of your car when you're supercharging, the speed at which you're charging, the cost, how much time is remaining. So this is really good if you're charging at a mall or you are charging at a place where you're getting some lunch. You can just kind of glance at your phone and see how close you are to being finished. At the moment, this only works for supercharging, DC fast charging. It does not work for home charging, and it does not work for third-party charging stations. So only for Tesla superchargers. But again, it's kind of cool to be able to see your current state of charge, how much time is remaining, and the price of the current session. So is this feature going to change your life? Probably not. Probably not. But it is something that's helpful and takes away some of that friction of having to go into the app and check and see where you're at as far as charging goes. So good job, Tesla. You do need iOS 17.2 or later, just in case you were looking for this feature. You need to upgrade to 17.2 or later. All right. Tesla is rolling out a cool safety feature in software update 2025.14.12. The new feature is called Child Left Alone Detection. Now, I will say at the get-go, not every single Tesla is going to be able to support this, and they're rolling it out right now only in Europe. But if your car is equipped with an in-cabin radar, which Tesla turned on, I think, in February, the radar will detect if a child is left unattended in the vehicle. And if it detects that there's a child left unattended in the vehicle, it will start to flash its exterior lights. It'll sound an audible alarm. It'll send notifications to the owner's Tesla app, so you get notifications on your phone. These alerts will repeat until someone returns to the vehicle. So if you're concerned about privacy, all of the data is processed locally on the vehicle, so this ensures the user has privacy. The feature is enabled by default, but you can disable it if you want to. I honestly don't know why you would want to, but if you go to controls, safety, and child left alone detection, you can just turn it off there. Initially, this is rolling out to mid 2023 and later Model 3s, like I said, in Europe, and they plan to expand to other markets in the coming months. Oh, and I should mention the way that it detects that there's a child in the vehicle, not just an adult waiting in the back seat. The cabin radar, it doesn't just sense the motion, but it can detect the size of an occupant, whether that's an adult or a child, whether the person's breathing or not, and it says it can detect their heart rate. I'm a little skeptical on that, but maybe, maybe. Another thing that is interesting is right now Tesla doesn't have the ability to call emergency services from your car. So if somehow they would need to call 911, I guess a way that they could get around this is it alerts somebody at Tesla and then that person calls 911. And then that's one of the things that's coming in the future, or Tesla still has to figure out how they're going to roll that out. Another thing is activate climate control automatically. So if it detects a child in the vehicle, it won't turn off the air conditioning or the heat, depending on what climate you happen to be in. I think we can all agree that this is a good feature, and I'm glad that Tesla is rolling it out. All right, here is our final story. Tesla is currently hiring people to control or operate or monitor its robo-taxis. Tesla is planning on launching its Robo-Taxi service in Austin, Texas next month. And I actually have a date on that. June 12th is when they're going to launch that service. And that came from Bloomberg. And Bloomberg spoke with a person familiar with the matter. So I feel real confident June 12th is the day that we're gonna see it launch. Um, the first robotaxis will be Model Ys, and there's gonna be a handful of them at first. But then these vehicles are supposed to be monitored, controlled, tele-driven by remote operators. And I'm trying to coin a term here as to what we're going to call them. So here are some suggestions, and I got some help from ChatGPT because I didn't come up with all of these on my own. But I have some suggestions on what we're going to call these teledrivers going forward. Please send in your votes for which one you like the best. Bodie, BODIE, at 918digital.com. All right, first up is Remote Maverick. My wife went to go see Mission Impossible on Sunday. Talked about Tom Cruise a little bit this week. So, Remote Maverick from Top Gun, which goes into the next one, Talk to Me Goose. I'm not sure that this is a good name for a teledriver, but if you're in the car and you need help, Talk to Me Goose sounds like a good way to get support on the phone. Uh, another one is Chairborne Ranger. Again, because my voice is kind of messed up. Chairborne, like Airborne Ranger, but Chairborne Ranger. If you have to explain your jokes, they're probably not funny. Chair Commander, Chair Force Commander, Lazy Ace, Captain No Pants. This one's one of my favorites. Commander Beep Boop. That was a ChatGPT recommendation. Remoticon, which is great. Charonaut, like astronaut. Slouchback, which seems rude. Drive Gremlin, Ghost Gremlin, and Telegremlin. Some of these were combined from some other ChatGPT recommendations. Telegremlin, I'm warming up to, but Commander Beep Boop is my favorite. What is your favorite? Send me an email, Bodie, BODIE, at 918digital.com. Anyway, the using of remote drivers, not that controversial. Waymo does it, and I'm sure all the other autonomous driving taxi services are doing it as well. So that's not super controversial. Um, Here's where I'm a bit concerned, and maybe concerned is the wrong word. Here's the part that raises my spidey sense, right? Elon says that he wants to scale the Robo-Taxi service up in a very short timeline and have thousands of Robo-Taxis in a few months. Well, we're just now hiring our telegremlins. That seems like a bit late in the game to start hiring people, considering the time it takes to hire them, get them on board, train them, and then deploy them. It doesn't seem like that. It seems like that's going to take longer than a few months. Now, if you're in Austin and you're like, June 12th, I'm going to get to ride in a Tesla Robo-Taxi, not so fast. This is invite only and not available to regular Joe Schmo ride gremlins, passenger gremlins. I don't know what are we going to call people who ride in these vehicles. I'll take your suggestions. This is going to be invite only, and I feel really confident that Tesla's only going to invite people who are going to say nice things about the service. They're not going to say mean things about the service. So we're not going to really know how this service is operating until Tesla starts opening up to just regular people. You know, there are going to be people that are watching these vehicles, and if it crashes into something, of course we're going to hear about it. But if it does something weird on the road at 2:00 in the morning and nobody sees it but the person who is invited to take part in the initial trial, we may not hear about it. So I would be very cautious when hearing about what an amazing experience Robo-Taxi is. Because I'm going to be honest with you, I love Waymo, but it's still not an amazing experience. It's a good experience. And when I first started riding, it was an okay-ish kind of bad experience sometimes. Tesla's got a lot of things to iron out, and we should expect and not lambaste them for ironing these things out unless they're lying or presenting Robo-Taxi in a way that it doesn't act like they do with full self-driving. But when it comes to time for Tesla to roll out Robo-Taxi, it is a fun pastime for people to pounce on Tesla and point to failures as this is the end of the company, or this is, this failure is so embarrassing to the company. No, the company's going to have failures. They're going to have wins. They're going to have losses. Every company does. And there's no getting around it. So, GM had some very, very public failures in the autonomous driving space. And we should definitely acknowledge when Tesla has failures, but we should also acknowledge and realize that they're still trying to figure this out. In short of being reckless and negligent, we should let them figure it out. If a Robo-Taxi stalls at a light and can't decide whether to go straight, left, right, or reverse, yeah, that sometimes happens to other Robo-Taxi services too. If it, God forbid, hurts or kills somebody, then yeah, absolutely, we should hold Tesla's feet to the fire for that. But not every single small mistake that the vehicle or that the service makes is the end of the world for Tesla. So what I'm trying to say here is let them cook. Let them cook as long as they are being responsible for the public safety and the rider safety. When I say responsible, I mean they're following best practices for our safety as well as whoever's riding in the vehicle. We certainly do not want to live in a world where autonomous vehicles are running over people or pets or destroying property. So as long as Tesla's doing it by the book and doing it safely, they're going to make mistakes. Let's give them a little grace to make mistakes. However, if they're not, or if they do something that is egregious, we should hold their feet to the fire. Okie doke. I think that's all my voice can handle. Also, my brain. It's late. I'm a little slow. So thank you everybody for listening to the show. Again, send me an email on what we should, tell me your favorite teledriver term, and maybe what are we calling the people that ride in these robo-taxis? What are we terming them? And let's keep it nice and clean. If you have one that's really nasty, tell your mom. Don't send that one to me. All right, everybody. Thank you very much for listening to this episode, and I will talk to you on Friday.